been partners on the show for the last 10 years. And a lot of times, some of these things happen, and it's just uncomfortable to see. The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business.
Despite acknowledging that he didn't even know the whole situation himself, Stephen A. Smith dismissed Molly Qerim's departure as none of your business. He revealed something more significant while attempting to maintain objectivity. ESPN's choice to keep its biggest star in the dark demonstrates that Molly's departure was about more than just business. It was a cover-up. The unexpected departure that no one anticipated. Molly Qerim abruptly left ESPN on September 15, 2025, with immediate effect, shocking the sports media community after 10 years of what seemed to be ideal chemistry on the network's flagship program. First Take. Stephen A. Smith's eventual disclosure of the reasons why their working relationship couldn't continue is what makes their departure even more explosive. Furthermore, the reality is much more nuanced than anyone could have predicted. Tensions had been escalating behind the scenes of one of the most popular sports debate shows on television for months due to significant salary inequalities, creative disagreements, and what industry insiders now refer to as a total collapse in professional dynamics. The meticulously maintained facade of harmony in the workplace was about to collapse in the most conspicuous manner imaginable.
Good morning. Welcome to First Take. Normally, our friend Molly Qerim would greet you. However, Molly announced last night she will be departing from ESPN. She's hosted First Take for 10 years and elevated the show with her grace, her expertise, her incomparable kindness. She's been an enormous part of our success for a decade.
On the surface, Stephen A. Smith's remarks from September 16, 2025, appeared sincere and sincere. When he spoke about the abrupt departure of his co-host of over 10 years, the anguish in his voice was evident. However, his remarks on his Sirius XM radio show later that day would provide a very different picture, one of perplexity, annoyance, and unsettling realities about what actually transpired behind the scenes. To really comprehend how shocking this departure was, the chronology of events is essential. With no public indication that anything was amiss, Molly Qerim was hosting First Take, as usual less than 24 hours before her last appearance on September 15, 2025. That afternoon, the Sports Business Journal broke the news that she would be leaving ESPN at the end of 2025 after turning down a contract extension.
Not only did she keep me and many others in line, she did it with dignity, class, and kindness, to say the least. We'll miss her and wish her every blessing on her future. I personally am grateful to her for her friendship, and I will miss spending every weekday morning with her right by my side.
Everyone was ill-prepared for this abrupt departure, as demonstrated by what Stephen A. disclosed on his radio program later that day. Additionally, there was a hint of unease in his remarks that there was much more to this tale than what was being discussed in public.
Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show. And to say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement. Molly is a friend. Molly is a co-worker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me.
The crucial word in this case is abruptly resigned. This wasn't a long-planned job change or a gradual transition. This was abrupt, unanticipated, and obviously uncomfortable for all parties. In a subsequent interview, Burke Magnus, president of programming at ESPN, disclosed that the Sports Business Journal report's early disclosure compelled everyone to act. It became hard to continue working together once the story was leaked to the public before an official announcement could be made.
We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years, and a lot of times some of these things happen, and it's just uncomfortable to see. The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business, but it's not as if I know all the details. There was a contract negotiation that was going on.
The statement, "The details are none of y'all business," is followed right away by the intriguing line, "It's not as if I know all the details." Stephen A. acknowledges that he was kept in the dark about what was actually going on while also attempting to safeguard his privacy. After much reflection, I've decided it's time to close this incredible chapter and step away from First Take, Qerim wrote in an Instagram story announcing her departure. Take note of what is noticeably missing from that assertion. Any reference to Stephen A. Smith by name, even though he served as her main co-host for the whole 10 years. Marcellus Way, a former ESPN analyst, saw this right away and conjectured on his podcast that the omission was telling and purposeful.
ESPN certainly did not want to lose her, but in the end, she made a decision to walk away from the show effective immediately. As you see from her Instagram post, her Instagram story last night, after much reflection, I've decided it's time to close this incredible chapter and step away from First Take.
The financial reality of this situation is really astounding. So let's discuss numbers. In March 2025, Stephen A. Smith agreed to a 5-year, $100 million contract extension, making him the highest-paid ESPN personality with a $20 million yearly compensation. Although they were both essential to the success of the same show, Smith was earning between 33 to 40 times more than his co-host, Qerim, whose yearly income was reported to be between $500,000 and $600,000. For 10 years, Qerim was the host of ESPN's top-rated show every weekday morning. She upheld order throughout contentious arguments, tempered arguments between some of the most extreme figures in sports media, and improved the professionalism of the program. However, she was not even in the same stratosphere as her male equivalent despite receiving remuneration. When you contrast Qerim's compensation with that of other ESPN celebrities, the wage gap becomes even more obvious. Every year, Kirk Herbstreit makes $18 million. Get Up host Mike Greenberg earns $6.5 million. Even the co-hosts of Pardon the Interruption made $6 million annually. All of these men were earning at least 10 times as much as Molly Qerim. However, when you consider what was going on with other female ESPN talent, the situation becomes even more convoluted. Just hours after Qerim's departure was made public, on September 16, 2025, ESPN stated that Malika Andrews had agreed to a multi-year contract deal that was apparently worth millions of dollars, which was a substantial increase above Qerim's pay. On his podcast, WI implied that Qerim felt more underappreciated despite her 10 years of service on the network's most significant show, as she witnessed these agreements taking place around her and younger female talent landing larger contracts. WI claims that she went to ESPN in hopes of receiving a raise commensurate with her contributions, but the network's offer was insufficient. She thought it was disrespectful, what he described as a lowball. At this point, Stephen A. Smith's contribution becomes significant and contentious. Despite his enormous influence at ESPN and his $20 million yearly income, Smith reportedly did not push for Qerim to obtain more equitable compensation during her contract negotiations, according to WI and other industry watchers. Perhaps the last straw was her 10-year co-host's purported lack of support. There were rumors that Fox Sports had made Qerim a sizable offer that would treble her earnings at ESPN, maybe amounting to $2 million annually. If true, it would indicate that a competitor network saw Qerim's worth and was prepared to pay for it in a manner that ESPN wasn't.
This is darker last week, but it's lighter today. Way to go, Mollywood. This is Mollywood. Hell with Hollywood. We in Mollywood now.
In addition to fostering continuous conjecture about the nature of their relationship, on-air moments like this demonstrated their humorous chemistry. Whether this strong working relationship had hampered the professional dynamics when it came to pushing for appropriate compensation and the difficult realities behind the scenes was the unsolved question. To fully comprehend the reasons why Molly Qerim and Stephen A. Smith's working partnership was eventually unable to endure. On the first take, we must look at the awkward trends and occurrences that accumulated during their 10 years together. The problem was much more complex than a straightforward compensation discussion gone awry, even if the pay gap was undoubtedly a significant contributing element. Smith and Qerim's working relationship had always been complicated, straddling a thin line between friendly camaraderie and something that occasionally veered into territory that unnerved spectators, and perhaps even Qerim herself. Over the years, Smith's remarks regarding Kum's appearance have caused many people to take notice and spark conversations about workplace appropriateness on social media.
What is that? I mean, what is that? I understand the UConn fandom and all of this other stuff, that's your alumni, but the nerve to show up to work dressed like that. Ladies and gentlemen, she has not lived up to the standard that has been set right here on First Take.
Whoa. These kinds of moments were presented as light-hearted conversation. In front of millions of people, they put Qerim in a situation where her male co-host was continually making comments about her appearance.
How dare you with this thing? I gotta call RC. I gotta get Ryan Clark to get you a wardrobe malfunction. So do I need to put the sweater, the jacket off?
Show a little shoulder. Let's get
the one shoulder. It's a style, Stephen A. It's a style.
Let's get the ratings up when you show a little shoulder.
A small shoulder remark made live on television is a prime example of the type of workplace interaction that has drawn more attention in recent years. Even though it was meant to be humorous, Qerim found herself in a difficult situation where she had to deal with her co-host objectifying her while still acting professionally. This dynamic is aptly illustrated by the notorious vibrating phone incident that occurred in October 2023. During a live segment, Qerim's phone vibrated. Smith kept using the word vibrating in ways that were obviously sexual in nature, making Qerim look uncomfortable on camera as the video went viral. These kinds of exchanges produced a setting in which Qerim was regularly the focus of attention for purposes unrelated to her expertise in athletics or her professional abilities. Additionally, this relationship might have influenced the idea that her contribution to the program was valued differently than Smith's when it came time for contract negotiations. Industry insiders and former ESPN staff members claim that tensions over creative direction and the show's development were rising behind the scenes. At ESPN, Stephen A. Smith's power had increased considerably to the point that he now had a major say in choices about programming, guests, and even hiring. His relationship with Qerim and everyone else he worked with was unavoidably impacted by the power dynamic that accompanied his $20 million yearly income. According to WI's podcast, Qerim felt she had no real ally during contract negotiations, and given their 10 years of collaboration, Smith's lack of support was especially hurtful. Wi's theory states that Qerim had hoped Smith would utilize his significant network influence to push for her to be paid more fairly, but that support never came to pass. Qerim's departure statement is structured in a way that supports this view. Smith was noticeably left out of her Instagram post that thanked the most intelligent, fervent, and entertaining voices in sports. Qerim decided to leave without personally thanking the man who had sat next to her every morning for 10 years of daily collaboration and hundreds of performances. That omission says a lot about how their relationship is going. By the end, the network was dealing with severe financial constraints and vying for top sports media talent with other networks and streaming services. This produced a situation where tough decisions regarding resource allocation and priority setting had to be made. ESPN's first goal was obviously Stephen A. Smith. His $20 million yearly compensation was a reflection of the network's perception that he was indispensable to their success and could not be replaced. But Qerim and other talented people suffered as a result of this prioritizing. Regardless of their contributions, everyone else's budget is unavoidably reduced when one personality commands such a large piece of it. This story has an additional dimension that adds complexity to the plot. Qerim's past contentious interactions with male visitors during the first take. The most famous of them was the LeVar Ball incident in 2019, in which Ball's response to Qerim's attempt to change the subject was, "You can switch gears with me anytime." This many people took to be a sexual connotation.
Well, right around this time, the middle of 2019, you're on ESPN. And Molly, keep mispronouncing it, Molly Qerim?
Who cares what her last name is?
Okay.
Anyway, the lady crazy.
LeVar Ball's contemptuous portrayal of the circumstance, saying that Qerim is insane for considering his remark improper, highlights the difficulties female hostesses encounter while negotiating professional relationships.
And nobody's saying that because this is what her mind is in the gutter, thinking that every man want her.
Yeah.
To me, she looked like witchy poo. That's not a good looking woman.
These kinds of instances led to a pattern in which Qerim had to defend her professional limits from male guests who were acting inappropriately. The question that persisted was whether she felt alone in coping with harassment at work or if her co-host, Stephen A. Smith, offered enough support during these times. ESPN's head of content, Burke Magnus, tried to present the matter as a simple commercial choice. Magnus made it clear in his interview that ESPN intended to retain Qerim and had been talking about ways to move her into roles other than First Take. Magnus claims that the network valued Qerim and wished to keep collaborating with her, albeit in new roles. Magnus' explanation, however, poses as many queries as it resolves. Why was it impossible for ESPN to reach a compensation arrangement that recognized Qerim's significance to their flagship program if they genuinely appreciated her, instead of making sure she felt appreciated and adequately compensated in that role? Why were they intending to move her away from First Take? There are notable differences in pay between male and female on-air talent, according to research on ESPN's pay structure, with male personalities often earning more money for similar positions. Qerim's predicament was merely the most well-known illustration of this larger trend. This is especially annoying because, under Qerim's direction, First Take rose to prominence as ESPN's top daily show. The success of the show was largely due to Qerim's abilities as a moderator, including her capacity to control strong personalities, steer conversations in the right direction, pose insightful queries, and uphold a professional demeanor. However, it appeared from her pay that the network considered her work to be less important than Smith's analyst role. It's especially noticeable how differently ESPN presented Malika Andrews' contract renewal. Hours after Qerim's departure, Andrews, then 30 years old, secured a big new agreement, indicating the network was prepared to support female talent, just not essential in keeping and paying the ladies who had already demonstrated their worth over a long period of time. Although Smith's first remarks regarding Qerim's leaving were polite, his later radio broadcast conversation exposed more nuanced emotions.
Hosting this show has been one of the greatest honors of my career. To be blunt, it came as a shock. I was not aware that this is something that she was contemplating doing. But in the end, she made her decision. And we have to move on as a show.